The toilet that changed their world. They have flush toilets? The words burst out from a young Japanese prisoner's mouth in 1945, half disbelief, half awe. He had been trained to see America as a land of moral filth and barbarism. But now, standing inside a prisoner of war camp in rural Texas, he faced a different kind of shock. A bathroom that gleamed with porcelain and chrome, a lever that made water swirl and vanish, clean, efficient, almost magical. For men who had lived for years in jungle mud and trench rot, this small act of civilization felt like sorcery. To them, it wasn't the guns or the airplanes that revealed America's power. It was the flush toilet, a simple device that embodied comfort, cleanliness, and dignity. Today, we uncover one of the strangest cultural collisions of the Second World War, when captured Japanese soldiers discovered that their enemy lived cleaner, safer, and, in many ways, more humanely than they had ever imagined. The year was 1945. The Japanese Empire had fought across the Pacific with unshakable devotion. To be captured was unthinkable. Surrender meant eternal shame. But as the war dragged on, at Saipan, Guam, and Okinawa, thousands of Japanese soldiers and sailors found themselves cornered, wounded, starving, and finally taken prisoner. Many had been told that Americans tortured POWs, that they'd be mutilated, executed, or paraded in cages. Instead, they were shipped across the ocean to sprawling camps in the American heartland. Places like Camp McCoy in Wisconsin, Camp Clinton in Mississippi, and Camp Kennedy in Texas. Here, they would encounter not brutality but modernity. These young men came from a Japan where indoor plumbing was still rare. Soap was rationed and most rural homes used pit latrines or wooden troughs. Cleanliness existed, but it was ritual, not mechanical. Bathing was sacred. Waste was private and primitive. When the camp gates opened and guards led them into mess halls, dormitories, and washrooms, the prisoners froze. Electric lights flickered overhead. Faucets hissed with hot and cold water. And then the toilets, polished, white, perfect. They flushed, a small lever, a sound like thunder, and waste disappeared as if swallowed by the earth. It was, to many, the first time they realized America's power wasn't just in its bombs. It was in its plumbing. Before capture, Japanese propaganda painted America as a barbarian. A former POW, Private Takeshi Matsuda, recalled later in his diary. They told us America was a land of corruption. But everything smelled clean, bleach, soap, coffee. Even the guards, still fear lingered. They avoided eating or drinking too much, believing poison might be hidden in the food. The first true shock came when they were led to the camp's washrooms. They expected buckets. They found a row of porcelain thrones. A man reached out, tapped the handle, and jumped when the water roared down. Laughter broke out among the guards. For a moment, so did the first smile those prisoners had shown since capture. American POW camps were designed not only for security but for sanitation. Each barracks had running water, showers, and weekly laundry rotations. Clothing was washed in large communal machines. Uniforms were disinfected and neatly folded by prisoner work crews. For men who had endured tropical disease, lice, and jungle decay, the smell of soap became intoxicating. Some prisoners spent hours just running their fingers under clean water, mesmerized by abundance. Inside the kitchens, stainless steel counters gleamed. Food handlers wore aprons and gloves. Even waste was treated with care. Garbage burned or composted far from living quarters. They even cleaned their trash, one POW wrote in disbelief. In one recorded incident at Camp Kennedy, guards discovered prisoners dismantling a toilet to see where the water went. They couldn't comprehend that a country could afford to waste clean water to remove waste. Soon, Japanese engineers among the POWs began sketching diagrams of the plumbing systems, eager to understand the secret. For them, it was as important as studying an enemy weapon. Another prisoner, Lieutenant Jun Nakamura, noted in a letter, "As weeks turned into months, American and Japanese men began to interact beyond orders and guards. Hygiene became their bridge. Japanese POWs who had worked as engineers or carpenters were assigned to maintain camp facilities. They learned to fix faucets, unclog pipes, and service electric heaters. The Americans, amused but respectful, started explaining how the systems worked. In one Texas camp, Sergeant William Harris, a plumber before the war, was assigned to oversee maintenance. He remembered, "Those fellas were fascinated. Every valve we opened, they took notes. I told them, son, this here's just plumbing, and they said, in Japan, this is magic. Over time, trust replaced suspicion. When a storm knocked out water pressure, it was Japanese technicians who volunteered to repair it, working alongside their captors to restore clean water to the camp. At mealtimes, guards noticed something else. The POWs began washing their hands before eating, a habit not common among soldiers in the field. They requested more soap, even volunteered to clean the barracks daily. This wasn't obedience, it was transformation. They began to see hygiene not as comfort, but as discipline, a reflection of inner order. It echoed their own Bushido ideals, but in a new, practical form. In the evenings, they watched American soldiers polishing boots, trimming nails, and changing uniforms after work. These small rituals of self-care, mundane to Americans, looked almost spiritual to men raised amid scarcity. In return, the Japanese shared their own rituals of cleanliness, teaching guards how to bathe properly in limited water, By the 1950s, Japan was building homes with modern plumbing, Western bathrooms, and water heaters, technologies once seen only in enemy camps. The country that once viewed surrender as shame began to value cleanliness as progress. Flush toilets, once a symbol of humiliation, became a badge of rebirth. In the end, this story isn't about toilets. It's about how something as simple as water and cleanliness can reveal the moral fabric of a society. For those Japanese POWs, the real defeat wasn't on the battlefield. It was in realizing that their enemy's strength lay in compassion, order, and respect for human dignity. They expected barbarism. They found plumbing. They have flush toilets? That question became more than a punchline. It became the first step toward understanding a world built not on conquest, but on care. If stories like this move you, if you believe history isn't just about weapons and wars, but about the human shocks that changed civilizations, subscribe to WW2 Untold. Because here we don't just tell history, then we feel it. And sometimes the smallest inventions, like a toilet flush, can reveal the biggest truths about humanity. By the 1950s, Japan was building homes with modern plumbing, Western bathrooms, and water heaters, technologies once seen only in enemy camps. The country that once viewed surrender as shame began to value cleanliness as progress. Flush toilets, once a symbol of humiliation, became a badge of rebirth. In the end, this story isn't about toilets. It's about how something as simple as water and cleanliness can reveal the moral fabric of a society. For those Japanese POWs, the real defeat wasn't on the battlefield. It was in realizing that their enemy's strength lay in compassion, order, and respect for human dignity. They expected barbarism. They found plumbing. They have flush toilets? That question became more than a punchline. It became the first step toward understanding a world built not on conquest, but on care. If stories like this move you, if you believe history isn't just about weapons and wars, but about the human shocks that changed civilizations, subscribe to WW2